Good morning, television and film fans. Today I'm going to continue my reviews of some of my favorite 1960s science fiction television shows. And I inevitably have to come to Star Trek, or as it's now known, Star Trek, the original series, since there are so many Star Trek shows out there, you need an identifier. I doubt that Gene Roddenberry would have imagined that there'd be 6, 7, 8 SF, Star Trek TV shows on at one time. But anyway, getting back to the show. One of the things I liked about it, and this is a personal thing for me, is that when I was growing up, I enjoyed science fiction. My father didn't really. And this was the one show that we watched together. We both loved it. Right from the beginning, we watched the premiere episode, which premiered on September 8th, 1966, on our 25-inch RCA Victor color TV in my parents' bedroom. It was one of the few times I was allowed to watch that TV was for this show. And again, one of the earlier shows in color, a lot of people kind of go, make faces when you say in color as if it was something rare, but people don't remember TV was pretty much in black and white until the mid-60s when that technology became available. And color shows were a big thing. They would always say, next such and such show in color, because that was a big boost. And they wanted to sell color TV sets, obviously. They being principally RCA and Zenith. We watched the show The Man Trap, which was the first show written by George Clayton Johnson, directed by Mark Daniels, and starring Albert Ryder, who I was familiar with from his role on The Invaders, and Gene Ball. It was really, really good. And of course, they introduced us to the principal crew, Bill Shatner as Captain James T. Kirk, Leonard Nimoy as Spock, and DeForest Kelley as Dr. McCoy. It centers on, they get a distress signal from a distant planet where one of Dr. McCoy's old flames, that's Gene Ball, is now Mrs. Nancy Crater, has started noticing that members of their scientific crew are showing up dead. And they have these strange circular marks on their face with like red discs, like 5 red indentations, as if something touched them in their face. Their bodies are completely drained of salt. And Kirk and Spock and McCoy arrive to investigate. Dr. Crater's wife is being a little flirty with McCoy, which I thought was a little bit inappropriate even then, but it turns out that things are much, much stranger than we thought. And again, I won't give it away to spoil it for people who still may not have seen it even after all these years. It also introduced the very beautiful, in my opinion, Grace Lee Whitney as Yeoman Janice Rand, who was one of my favorite characters. I often wish they had kept her in the series for longer. The reason they gave, and I think this is kind of a wimpy reason, is that they didn't want Kirk to have a quote-unquote girlfriend. They didn't want him to have a permanent love interest. They basically wanted him to play fast and loose with just about every alien woman that he ran into, which he did in the series. But I think that was kind of a wussy reason. I think they really just wanted to let her go because they wanted to cut salary costs. Anyway, we liked that from the beginning. Watched every episode. Had some great direction, some great writers. Directors like Joseph Pevney and Mark Daniels, and I think Vince McKeevity did a couple of them, and there was writers, some of the cream of the crop, Harlan Ellis and Theodore Sturgeon, George Clayton Johnson on the first one, D.C. Fontana, John D.F. Black, Jerry Saul, Jerome Bixby, Norman Spinrad. Some of the real luminaries in science fiction at the time wrote episodes for the original series, and most of them are really terrific. I'm not going to, go through a review of all of them because, again, I don't want this to be an hour, 2-hour video. I like to keep these things brief. I will give you some of my favorites. I'm not going to really do a top 10. I'm just going to give you some of my favorites. Of course, my absolute favorite is Harlan Ellison's brilliant The City on the Edge of Forever. It's great. It's a love story. It's a time travel story. It's an action adventure. It's a romance. It's basically got everything. And nobody but Harlan could have written that. Yes, I've read his original script, and I like it better than what was produced, but I understand the reasons why they thought, anyway, that they couldn't do it, that it would be too expensive to do the way he had written it at the time. albeit his version won him a Screen Actors Guild Award, which it richly deserves. Another great episode that I enjoy is probably number 2 on my top 10 is The Doomsday Machine, written by Norman Spinrad. Great, Moby Dick-esque episode with William Wyndham in the role of Commodore William Decker, who is absolutely brilliant. He chews the scenery like nobody else. He even slid in a reference to the Caine Mutiny when he's taking the tapes and flicking them between his fingers on the bridge. That's a reference to Humphrey Bogart clicking the steel balls in the Caine Mutiny. A deliberate reference that William said it was a deliberate reference. So you see somebody going mad just as Humphrey Bogart went mad in that movie. And it has just as great an impact. And great special effects for the time. That Doomsday Machine scared the hell out of me as a kid. That image gave me nightmares, and I'm not kidding. And I've always wondered if, Spock speculates, I wonder if there are any more of them roaming out there. I wonder if there's a Doomsday fleet and it's coming. I wish somebody'd write that. Actually, somebody did, and I'll go into that a little bit later. My third favorite episode is Mirror, Mirror, written by Jerome Bixby. The first time we see the quote-unquote mirror universe, where in an accident that occurs during transport, the main members of the crew, Kirk, Spock, Scotty, and Dr. McCoy and Lieutenant Uhura are transferred from their universe into a parallel universe where the Starfleet is evil, and they're an evil empire. And I love the little salute they give that's like half Roman and half Nazi. That's like, the Romans used to do this, and we know what the Nazi salute is, so they went, which is basically the combination of the two. I also loved Barbara Luna in this as Marlena Moreau. Very gorgeous, very sexy girl. And really, really, I love when she says, "I'm busy oiling my traps, darling." Well, her traps were quite magnificent in my opinion. But I really love that episode, and I love all the episodes that have been set in the Mirror universe since, particularly the ones that they did on Discovery with the Mirror Empress Giorgio, who will now, of course, be in Section 31, a movie miniseries starring Michelle Yeoh, who I think is stunning. Miss Malaysia, indeed. Wow. And also a Bond girl. My fourth is Mock Time, written by Theodore Sturgeon. First time we get to see Vulcan and what Vulcan is really like, and it reveals a lot about their culture and their history, starring the stunning Arlene Martell as Spock's intended, and, great fight scene between Kirk and Spock, and the whole deception of, Kirk dying when, in fact, McCoy just knocked him out with a drug, which I thought was a great, some great writing there. Great music, too. Incidental music was really good on that episode. Number 5, I think, I have trouble doing like top 10s. I just have so many. Basically, out of all the 79 original episodes, there are only about 4 that I don't like. I think number 5 would be Journey to Babel, which is the one where we first meet Spock's parents, played by Mark Leonard as Sarek and Amanda Wyatt as Amanda, his human wife, and the conflicts between Vulcan and Earth, and the conflicts between Spock and Kirk, and his Spock wanting to be logical and not emotional, and his mother being very emotional, and the conflicts between the two. And I love the final line where he says, she seems like very emotional. Why did you marry her? And Sarek says it seemed a logical thing to do at the time, implying that she was pregnant when he married her. I like that one a lot. I like The Ultimate Computer, which, even though there was some great over-the-top acting, lecturing to row on fools who can't begin to grasp my theories. I love that speech. That was great. Of course, that actor went on to play Blackula, which I thought was terrific. I like Assignment Earth with, Terry Garr and, I'm sorry, my mind is going blank, but I really like that one. I like, a lot of the episodes are just terrific. The only ones, I like The Gamesters with Triskelion, which, again, it's a little bit silly, but come on, folks, it's got Angelique Petitjean wearing basically tinfoil. You can't ask for better than that. And then, like I said, the only episode that I'm going to get probably lambasted for saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I like Spock's brain. Okay, yeah, it's a silly idea. It's goofy. It's wacky. It doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense. But come on, folks. Girl in purple dominatrix boots. That's all I need to say. You know, I can't think of that as a bad episode. Of course, there are greater ones. There's The Enemy Within, which was great. There's the one where, title's escaping me, the one where Mark Leonard plays a Romulan, where they do kind of a submarine warfare plot, but it's between spaceships. I thought that was really good. And first time we see the Romulan cloaking device as well. The Naked Time was interesting. The Operation Annihilate with those really scary creatures, even though it's somewhat of a ripoff of Robert Heinlein's The Puppet Masters. In fact, it is a ripoff of it. It's still well done and scary. And again, we got to learn a little bit more about Kirk's family. The Conscience of the King, where we find out some things about Kirk's upbringing, and again, some great over-the-top acting, and the beautiful Barbara Anderson was also in Mission Impossible for a couple of a few brief episodes, I think, and a lot of, there are a few episodes that I don't like, but I said only a few. A Taste of Armageddon I really loved, where the people conduct a war completely by computers, but if you're killed, you actually have to go into a disintegration chamber and basically commit suicide. And I thought that was, it's an interesting and horrifying idea. Let This Be Your Last Battlefield, which took on, racial prejudice in a unique way. Again, they used the show to highlight a lot of social ills and injustices. A Private Little War, which is obviously a bit of a Vietnam War reference. The Paradise Syndrome, which starred the gorgeous Jill Ireland falling in love with Spock, which I thought was interesting. All Our Yesterdays with Mariette Hartley. Somebody said, all the strawberry blondes and redheads fell in love with Spock, which I think was kind of true in that show. Is There in Truth No Beauty, which I thought was really good. Again, introduced a completely non-human alien, which we never actually got to see, but I think was very interesting. And The Devil in the Dark, which again, there's probably the first time we see a non-humanoid alien that's not evil. It's not a monster. We think it is at first, but it turns out that it's not. And I liked that. And one where McCoy says his famous line, "I'm a doctor, not a bricklayer." I liked that. The only ones that and it's just a handful, and you'll feel free to disagree with me. I do not like Squire of Gothos. I know a lot of people think it's funny. I think it's dumb. And I thought it was dumb when I first saw it, and I can't stand that character. I thought he was just a brat, and I didn't like it at all. Turnabout Intruder, which was unfortunately the last show we got, I thought had a rather weak plot. I don't understand why they wouldn't have women captains in Starfleet by that time. And I think the previous shows have shown that that's not true, that there were, in fact, female Starfleet captains, even before Kirk's era. Again, I don't think, I think Roddenberry was trying to project a future where these issues had already been worked out, including equality between the sexes. And I think it would have been better if they had shown that there were, in fact, female Starfleet captains. And as TNG went on to say there were even, Starfleet admirals who were women, quite a lot of them, actually. So that was, I thought, was a particularly bad episode, just some really bad acting, and in my opinion, some bad writing, too. And The Children Shall Lead is my least favorite episode. Again, it's some interesting ideas. It's not terrible. Melvin Belli did a fairly good role, considering he was a lawyer, not an actor. I thought he did a fairly decent job in the character of, this kind of evil creature. And again, the child actors weren't terrible either, but it was just kind of a bad plot. Some of my other favorites, I like Charlie X, of course, with Robert Walker Jr., who was also on a great episode of The Invaders called The Panic. Metamorphosis, which tells the story of Zephyr Cochrane for the first time, and which stars the gorgeous Eleanor Donahue. That Which Survives, a strange, slow episode, but I thought it was interesting, and again stars another beautiful woman, Lee Meredith, another redhead, and you know, it's kind of, you know, an interesting thing about, you know, a vanished civilization and their sort of sad remnants. It made me sort of sad. I do not like The Empath. I know a lot of people do like it. I just think it's a little too long. I don't think the acting is bad. I don't think the writing's bad. I just thought it was a little too long. And also very weak sets, I thought. I said just a handful out of the 79 that I don't like. The rest of The Lights of Zetar I thought was you know, not a great episode. I liked Wolf in the Fold. I thought was great, particularly the over-the-top acting by everybody, including the main character. I thought was really great. You know, screaming and yelling and, you know, just craziness, and a great storyline. Scary, you know, one of the scary episodes. Cat's Paw I thought was kind of dumb. I liked the end when they reveal that the creatures are these like little shrimp-looking creatures. They look like they took a couple of shrimp and stuck whiskers on them. Yeah, I thought it was, but again, it's a Halloween episode. It was supposed to be silly. It was supposed to be funny. I like the Return of the Archons, although it's another Kirk versus the computer thing where, you know, he basically says, "Let's unplug it" at the end. That's his, you know, go-to line when they have to take on a you know, AI or a computer that's taken over something is Spock, let's pull the plug. You know, and they find a way to do that. But again, an interesting story and some good acting, good writing, good music. Again, the musical score by Alexander Courage was always terrific, I thought. The costumes by William Ware Tice were really good. The designs by Matt Jeffries. Somebody, and I didn't realize this until somebody said there was apparently a joke in one of the episodes. They see these little, when you look into the engine core, in the engine room, there are these pipes, and along one of the pipes was labeled XL5. Somebody was a Jerry Anderson fan on the crew, because they snuck that in there. There's always other little references, apparently, to some other SF shows that pop up from time to time. Overall, you know, just a fantastic series, specifically for the time. Series 3 started to go downhill, and I'm going to give you a reason, and I'm sorry if some people disagree with this. They brought in Fred Freiberger to be the producer. For those of you who are not familiar with who Fred Freiberger is, he produced a movie about giant locusts. Now, anybody who knows high school science knows that there can't be giant locusts because of the squared cubed law. Square the size, and you cube the weight. So a giant locust would be crushed by its own endoskeleton, couldn't even move. But he thought that was good science fiction. So bringing this person on to direct a science fiction TV series who didn't even know basic science, I thought was a bad move. And the quality really started to go down. Some of the shows like Friday's Child and The Lights of Zetar and The Empath were under his guidance. And he also ruined Space 1999, too, by wavering back and forth. First, he came and said, "I want to see a monster every week." And they were like, okay. So they started writing scripts that had monsters in them. And then he came back and said, "Why are there all these goofy-looking monsters? What are you doing? You're ruining the series." So, again, this is not the guy you want to produce your show. That said, again, I really love the original series. There's really nothing about it that I don't like, except a few weak episodes. But again, that's going to happen in any TV show. You know, there's some weak episodes of The X-Files, too, and I really loved that show. A lot of weak episodes of Lost in Space, but again, I love that show. It doesn't really, and weak episodes of The Invaders, too. But again, this doesn't ruin the series at all. It's still completely enjoyable, and of course, it launched this magnificent franchise that took off, albeit it had a rocky start with Star Trek: The Motion Picture, but from the Wrath of Khan on, it just took off at, you know, light speed, as it were, at warp speed. and has continued from there. And I love everything. I'm not going to ever give a negative review of any Star Trek show because I love them all.